Anybody got anything?
Casey! Move up! You got it! Fucking help me! Right over here! Fuck!
All right, come on, let's see what we're dealing with.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. So I've been watching Shogun on Disney Plus, and it's got me thinking. It has the veneer of a really good show. It has the cool characters of the wily yet crafty Toranaga, like attempting to seize power in Japan over corrupt bureaucrats. It has brilliant set design, brilliant costume design, pretty good cultural depiction of Japan. But despite the performances, which are good, like Sanada is Toranaga, objectively he's the best Japanese actor out there. I can't help but notice they seem to be pretty consistently writing themselves into holes. And they're doing this at the same time as they're, attempting to subvert expectations as hard as they fucking possibly can. In terms of justice, in terms of classic story structure, that sort of stuff. Subverting expectations, it can be a good thing if it's cleverly done and it doesn't compromise the story. But when it's shonkily done and it results in a plot hole or they write themselves into a corner with it, it really looks bad. So what do I mean by subverting expectations? Well, in the story they've gone to great lengths to create this utterly totalitarian, bureaucratic, brutally realistic depiction of that era of Japan, where everything is just ruthlessly about political maneuvers. That it's the only way to survive. There's a suicide aspect mixed into everything here, and it's just horribly totalitarian. The rulers seem to play with different rules and that sort of thing, and betray their principles. It seems a little bit inconsistent culturally speaking. But yeah, like just some of the parts of the story. You've got so
Anybody got anything?
the main character Toranaga gets trapped in, I think it's Osaka, and it's very explicitly stated that he's going to have to like politically maneuver his way out. He won't be able to escape by himself. He's greatly outnumbered. They have complete power over him. It's completely ruthless. They'll kill him on a whim. That sort of thing. The tone up to that point has been pretty much the same thing. Like, it's been depicted as, you know, just brutal, where the powers just have complete power and everything like that. No classical heroic story aspect can sort of survive there. And then he just manages to sneak out, and on the way he has this battle which he miraculously survives, despite, you know, being ambushed and being ambushed by greater numbers. Like, that's just a kind of dumbass plot hole. It just seems like, you know, horribly poor writing. Like, ambushes themselves give you like a 10-to-1 advantage in numbers if you achieve complete tactical surprise. He was not only ambushed with complete tactical surprise, he was also outnumbered when that happened. And not only, he seemingly managed to beat off the ambush and also escape. Like, that's just completely fucking retarded given the tone that they've set for it. Like, there should have been some other trick there. Like, that's just fucking bad writing. It's just the same for like the character that managed to survive that ambush despite being, you know, horribly outnumbered, and literally in terms of story meant to have, you know, sacrificed himself there, like Mariko's husband. He's like literally the only one left on the shoreline. He's completely outnumbered by, you know, local militia. It's like 1 on 100, and somehow he manages to like escape it. It just feels like they're like artificially increasing the pressure on the characters to the point where they can where they can't like legitimately write them out of a situation with intelligent writing, trickery, or something like that. It comes off as like artificial, and it's just this excess of subversion of expectation which has just caused them to be written into these corners. It's just kind of shit. The same applies to, you know, Blackthorn's escape from Osaka, despite the deal with what the Portuguese pirate had said. He basically said he had to leave him behind, left him on the other ship. At the same time, this was like all this blatant trickery and unhanded, you know, honorless trickery. There's like inconsistent seppuku rules when it comes to like moral dishonor. And, like, despite that, no one commits seppuku over this broken deal. It's just so inconsistent. The subversion also applies to, like, characters themselves. Like, Yabushigi's nephew, who is supposed to prize, you know, the stability of his fief. He's known to be, like, an effective and fair ruler of his fief. And then, for seemingly no reason in one of the opening episodes, he beheads like a Christian, an established Christian priest in his town, who's praying over like this Blackthorn character while they're escorting him to receive judgment. It just simply goes against what this character is eventually developed into, and it's just, it's fucking inconsistent. And it's just sort of edgy for the sake of being edgy. And it just doesn't seem like good writing to me. And like, this goes the same with the Yabashigi himself. Like, Yabashigi's meant to be this sort of treacherous sadist who loves to contemplate the moment of death. He boils like one of the sailors alive just for enjoyment, just to like meditate about his death. And he's just like clearly this fucking insane sadist, right? And then suddenly, like, from halfway through or so, he just exhibits no more of this sadism, and he seems to be able to show reasonable like political acumen and all this sort of shit. Like, it just doesn't match the characters. Like, it gets worse and worse. Like, the plot holes and the writing themselves into corners just gets worse and worse as the series goes on, in my opinion. Like, the pace of the show just slows, and it just, at one point, it just injects an entire lecture about, you know, courtesans and how sex work is real work in this ancient Japanese totalitarian culture that it just lasts like pretty much the entire episode, and like it just feels like a degenerate leftist wokist lecture, and it seems to be trying to portray sex work as legitimate. And it just seems to be attempting to just defend this, like, these inferior values by, like, parading around like a historical example. And the historical example comes from, like, an inferior totalitarian, barbaric, bureaucratic society that just glorifies suicide in, like, response to, like, failure. And not just any failure to the state. Like, it's like that sort of totalitarian. It's just, it's not good writing, and that's just dumb shit leftism right there. Oh, sex work is real work, is it? Oh, wow. And like, this sort of shit goes on and on. Like, you add to this, like, Toranaga's son, like, attempting to kill Toranaga's brother and, like, goofily falling and hitting his head on a rock while just trying to kill his, you know, the treacherous uncle. And it just feels like the subversion overtakes the quality. Like, that's just stupid shit, right? Not that the uncle got the upper hand or managed to trick him or talk his way out of it or anything like that. No, the son slips and hits his head on a rock. Like, that's fucking retarded writing. And, like, it goes on and on. Like, these are not the only examples in the show. Like, the maneuver, the political maneuver that ultimately wins Toranaga the political war here is goofy as well. Like, he essentially sends Mariko, who is meant to be this sort of low status, completely, you know, dishonored woman who just wants to kill herself out of honor and duty, into danger, essentially, in order for her to establish that they're holding political prisoners and to die in the attempt, right? And that's meant to politically highlight how horrible all the corrupt bureaucrats are and that they're keeping all these people as hostages, right? And because of the relationship between Mariko and the Emperor's mother, the Emperor's mother turns against the bureaucrats. And then she sort of backs Toranaga after that. Like, that's goofy. And also, who would put that much faith in Mariko? And also, why wouldn't they just kill Mariko for not obeying the rules? Like, the whole thing is fucking silly. And, like, why would she hold that much value anyway as, like, this dishonored daughter of a former emperor? Like, none of it makes fucking sense. And, like, it's at this point the show's just sort of starts to drag, and it feels like filler with, like, inconsistent artificial threat followed by fucking pretty flawed writing, if we're being honest, to get out of said threat that either writes them into a corner or subverts the expectation straight into a corner. And it's not just that, like, all that's bad enough, but it also has like leftist tropes which are like artificially increase the depth, I guess you'd say. It's got the trope of the woman unfaithful to the husband, and then the cuck noble husband, you know, still looking out for her, which is that's just like a leftist archetype thrown in. Thrown into like leftist writing all the fucking time. It's just sort of the normalization of women cheating, like in media. It's just like a subversive leftist story, kind of just to destroy the family unit, and like normalize, you know, cheating and, you know, the pretense of equality and feminism and all that sort of thing. The trope itself is like artificial. Like everyone, you know, after this then of course wonders why like half of liberal women have like mental illnesses and, you know, become empty egg carton means. Like no one points out the average age of death for like a porn star is like 36, and like the methods are mostly from, you know, escapism, either escaping the stigma and shame and trauma with like drugs and overdosing, or just, you know, straight up suicide. But it's just the whole fucking liberal framework of the show. Like, yeah, go ahead, Shogun, lecture me for a full episode on how sex work is still real work. Yeah, it's fucking nonsense. And then, like, honestly, the more I watch it, the more grating it just becomes. Like, the worse the writing, the sillier the subversions, it kind of just hit the point where I seriously thought, can I actually finish it? Is it actually worth finishing at this point? Like, the writing got so bad. Like, the critics like to explore all this shit, right? Like, all these different themes, like cuckery and sex work is real work and cheating, as sort of dark or complex or deep themes. They're really not that. Like, all these themes are really as shallow as sex sells, and it's all it is, you know, sexual novelty, like the idea of cuckery and all that sort of shit. Sexual novelty. It's as shallow as it gets. It's not complex at all. And yet liberals are always trying to, you know, play off these, you know, degenerate perversions as like deep or complex or whatever, just out of like narcissism and trying to normalize this shit. It's just shallow and unworthy, really. And it's like past time that writing gets called out as that. It's even a cliche. That idea of the, you know, unfaithful husband or the using sex in a work, it's cliche. It itself is a cliche. And it people and critics like to think like these cliches are deep, or it shows complexity to a story. Not really. It's basically a leftist ideology, really. It's like the illusion of complexity, which is just kind of sex sells. And the critics that say that this is like a deep theme or complex theme, they're usually the same ones whose philosophers like argued for pedophilia, like the Foucaults and the Sangers. It's not far off the queer destruction of the norm, right? And like the writing still stays bad pretty much the whole way through. Like there's even more issues. Like Blackthorn, the English dude who goes there, he's got extremely inconsistent battle skill. Like, he shows to be pretty easily handled like a baby by all the samurais. Yet the shinobi assassins, when they get the jump on the samurai, like one lady shinobi assassin manages to kill like fucking pretty much an entire house guard. And then you've got Blackthorn right at the end with Marigo, and he's easily able to sort of melee kill multiple shinobi assassins. It's just fucking bad writing. It's like really not good writing. I mean, if you were going to be honest to the, you know, the thing, Blackthorn as like a Western English sailor would have like more of a brawling wrestling style, right? With bites and headbutts and all that sort of shit. Nut grabbing, nothing, no honor to do with it. Fair enough, he wouldn't be able to match sword skill, like one-on-one, but he would pretty much get the nod in like a physical confrontation against the smaller, you know, judoka samurai, right? Just because he'd probably outweigh them by like a couple of weight classes and probably just be able to fucking slam them. And like, in addition to that, he'd be biting and headbutting and gouging and all that sort of shit. And, you know, judoka, they don't really handle... Like, they go for arm control, right? They control the elbows, that sort of thing. They don't usually do well to people collapsing in on them with elbows or headbutts or whatever, which is exactly what he would do in a fight against them. And, like, also, every fight doesn't start from grappling. He outweighs them by 1 to 2 weight classes, and he towers over them. Yeah. And, like, their arts aren't necessarily about striking. Like, there would be some, I assume, karate striking and all that sort of shit. But it wouldn't compare to boxing. Like, every time you see stand up just with hands boxing versus stand up just with hands karate, boxing usually fucking takes it in a big way. But yeah, it's just no, he's immediately vastly physically inferior in terms of striking and physical combat, except when it comes to shinobis, which just doesn't make sense. And to like put that into even, you know, more perspective, historically speaking, Americans in the Pacific War, they absolutely handled the Japanese. Like, even when the Japanese closed the distance with swords during their bonsai suicide charges and shit, the Indian Gurkhas, like, handled them as well when they tried to invade India. Like, there's this assumption that the Japanese army will win under any circumstances in a physical confrontation as long as they close the distance with swords. When the reality, particularly with like guns, muzzle strikes, and offhanding with sabers and stuff like pirates were known to do, was closer and a lot greyer. Like, particularly when you factor in all the allegedly dishonorable tactics that might get employed, and longer rifles with bayonets, which essentially function as spears. Like, all these fights would be a lot closer. It wouldn't be just the samurai dominating all the fights with the samurai sword. No, it kind of took 2 samurais to beat one guy with a spear. Like, that's the arithmetic that is used there, right? And everyone with a long musket with a bayonet on the end of it essentially has a spear. Like, swords are pretty overrated, unless you're like fighting someone who doesn't have a sword and has no armor. The whole depiction of Japanese culture here is, and its clash with Western culture is, it's significantly grayer, let's put it that way. Yeah. So, in the end, is Shogun worth a watch? It's probably worth a watch for the visuals, but it's weird to say because it has the illusion of depth to its writing and its show, but the writing and that is actually its weak point, but it's a weak point that's covered up pretty well with the depth of the visuals in the show. So it might still be worth a watch, but the depth behind the writing and the excessive, overturning of expectations and that sort of thing. The writing themselves into corners, the inconsistent structures of the story. It makes it look pretty fucking bad in terms of writing. And people miss that. Like I think on IMDb it's got like an 8.5. I don't think I'd give it that. I think I'd give it like a 6.5 or a 7. And that just, purely shallowly on the visuals of the show. But yeah, that's why Shogun isn't as good as you think it is.
We'll string you up!
Damn it! Get down!
Okay. Someone's out there.